A very warm good afternoon to all of you. May I request the dignitaries to come on the dais. I request Professor Manisha Priyam from NEPA, the speaker of today's distinguished lecture, to please come up on the dais. I request Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, and Professor R.S. Sarraju, Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, to also accompany her. Respected Professor Manisha Priyam, Department of Education Policy, National Institute of Education Planning and Administration, NEPA, New Delhi. Speaker of the today's distinguished lecture, Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, Professor R.S. Sarraju, Pro Vice Chancellor, distinguished guests, faculty members, officers, staff, and students. A warm welcome to all of you. On the occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, while we are celebrating 75 years of independence, and on release of the book Modi at 20, Dreams Meets Delivery, further in this month of September when the nation celebrates Shikshak Parv, University of Hyderabad has organized a distinguished lecture on topic Building Universities That Matter, the Context of India Today. To begin this program, I now invite Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, to deliver his presidential address.
Namaste to all of you. A warm welcome and a very exciting welcome to Dr. Manisha Priyam ji and my colleagues Devesh Nigam ji and Professor Sarraju ji on the podium, and the committed audience that I see here. Really welcome all of you. Today's distinguished lecture is a part of 75 years of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebration. And in this celebration we have Manisha Priyam ji delivering a lecture on a topic which is very dear to all of us sitting here. Building universities that matter. It's a very profound topic, but it is also a topic which is very complex. Building anything that matters is very, very complex. Building anything that is meaningful, that is impactful, is the need of the hour, and it has to be done very well. And it's not easy. All the low-lying fruits on the tree are plucked. We know that. But this is one of the higher fruits on the tree. Therefore, it requires fair amount of thoughtful planning, not just planning. Now, one must wonder why the banner is there the way it is. Modi at 20 and his picture, and then there is the distinguished lecture with the topic. When I saw Modi at 20, I interpreted this as Modi at 2020 NEP. Because I am an academician, I look at academics everywhere. And when I see 20, it is 2020 for me. That is NEP. In fact, he is one of the architects of Modi ji is one of the architects of NEP 2020. I know it is very dear to very dear to him, as it is to all of us. So I do not look at Modi ji. I'm just saying a few statements about him. Nothing to do with the ideology. I'm just speaking about him as a person. I look at him not as a politician. I look at him mostly as an ideas person. And many, many ideas are impacting our system now, and they are going to impact in the years to come. And this is very well captured in that book called Modi at 20, which is part of the celebrations. And that book is compiled by the writings of experts who are non-politicians about the work done by Prime Minister. And that is part of the celebration. And in this celebration, we have to discuss about ideas. Ultimately, what counts is not the content, but ideas. And if the ideas are good, actionable, we must run to implement it. And universities are the best places to create ideas. And universities are the best places to discuss, debate about ideas. Vehemently disagree also on ideas sometimes. Enjoy the disagreements among our ideas, of course. And then at the end of the day, ideas will win. And if all of us are convinced that certain idea is good for the university and we must go and implement it. And when we do that, all of us may not be on the same page. It doesn't matter. As long as the spirit of that idea is good, good for the university, good for the system at large, it is our bounden duty to go and implement it, not for you and me, but for the system at large, that is University of Hyderabad. It is in this spirit that we invited Dr. Manisha Priyam ji, because you will realize that she will cover areas that are very close to our heart in the university systems, in the academics, in the education, and education that is relevant for society, politics and policies of the education system. So there are many, many angles that she has thought through, and she has very, very clear and succinct ideas about which I want her to share, and that's the reason she is here. So I don't want to belabor too many points here. I am all ears, we are all ears for her lecture, and over a cup of tea we can discuss with her. We may even disagree with her. Not a problem. She will smile, we will smile, everybody will smile. So finally, सार्थक विश्वविद्यालय का निर्माण वर्तमान भारत के संदर्भ में. This topic is very rarely discussed about. Sarthak Vishwavidyalaya is a very profound need of the hour. Anywhere in the world, certainly in India, because we are a young country, young in terms of our average age, young in terms of our existence as a single entity, free entity. And it is very, very likely that we will make a strong impact globally in the years to come when the rest of the Western advanced world is aging. We must be ready with Sarthak Vishwavidyalaya. If we are not ready with Sarthak Vishwavidyalaya when the rest of the other side is aging, I think we will not have made Sarthakta with our lives. Thank you very much and namaste.
Thank you, sir. I have a tough job of introducing the speaker of the distinguished lecture today, Dr. Manisha Priyam, a professor of Department of Education Policy at National Institute of Education Planning and Administration, New Delhi. She is an academician and researcher and works on issues of development and politics. She has a doctorate from London School of Economics and Political Science in International Development, where she examines the policies of education reforms in comparative perspective. Some of her notable books are Reclaiming Public Universities, Comparative Reflection for Reforms, published by Routledge, 2022, and The Contested Politics of Education Reforms in India, Aligning Opportunities with Interests, published by Oxford University Press in 2015. Dr. Priyam has also written book chapters, namely Global Wars, National Legacies and State Controls, The Dilemma of Internationalism of Public Universities, Missing women leaderships in Indian higher education, broken pipeline or fields of power as a few of them. Dr. Priyam has served on various national and international committees. She is a member of Gender Budgeting Committee, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India since 2019. The Australia-India Research Fellowship Steering Committee for Doctoral Fellowships since 2022. Institutes of Eminence Evaluation Committee since 2022. In her policy advisory role, she worked with the then Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, the World Bank, UNDP as advisor on projects and territorial education reform, primary education reforms and urban social policies. Dr. Priyam has over 2 decades of experience of working with policymakers, administrators, stakeholders in policy formulation, implementation and evaluation. She is a leading commentator on policy and political issues on the print and electronic media worldwide, like in the Australian broadcasting publication, BBC, India Today, CNN, CNBC, Times Now, ET Now, India Today, Aaj Tak, etc., etc., etc. Madam, I now invite you to deliver your distinguished lecture on the topic Building Universities That Matter, the Context of India Today. सार्थक विश्वविद्यालयों का निर्माण वर्तमान भारत के संदर्भ में. A big round of applause for Dr. Manisha Priyam. Madam.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today, and I stand before you with a sense of gratitude. I stand before you as a fellow academic, a younger colleague, and as a researcher who strives to reclaim the public university in the global south, a theme that I will deliberate upon at some length in the midst of an esteemed community of scholars. I was here with you in late March, in your eminence, as you opened up soon after the forced COVID closures. The institutions of eminence were high on the Modi government's priority list, and you were one of those universities that the government sought to care for. And this was evident as within days of reopening after COVID, we came down to your campus, and the candor with which Honorable Vice Chancellor Shri B.J. Rao, Professor B.J. Rao, discussed academic issues with us. I'm thankful to you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor B.J. Rao, for this invitation and for the opportunity to discuss a few issues that have been close to my thoughts since the Honorable Prime Minister announced the new National Education Policy 2020, something that you noticed in Modi at 20, a de novo policy moment, as I see, that came after over 3 decades. And within 6 months of the COVID lockdown, even as schools and university campuses had been closed, there was a pall of fear, especially as we worried about the right to life, in a collective sense, as an attribute of our commons rather than an individual right to live. We all would save ourselves if we acted individually to isolate. So there was a genuine dilemma that was a dilemma of the commons, no longer a right to life, that even the separation of powers and the esteemed judiciary could come out and fight against. After all, what were we fighting? This was a nanoparticle that had fooled us. Livelihoods were gone. Our weak infrastructure for health, especially in the northern parts of our country, was rendering bare lives vulnerable. Young lives and dreams of a future were face to face with the uncertainty and complexity of our times. Now, this we may call global in its opportunities, our times, but also global in their vulnerabilities. Now, as a community of scholars, we are aware that the nature of data is indeed uncertainty. The nature of data is indeed its complexity, notwithstanding the attempts of data smoothers of plotting long-term time trends and trend lines about secure rates of returns, of high and better futures, about making more and more personal investments in individual futures. The power of the market conjoined by regression lines to the endeavors of the university. Alas, who knows this better the trickery of this than a community of scholars as esteemed as yourself. COVID was breaking these myths, and it motivates us today to reflect as a collective body, reflect about our commons and about the need for building universities as embedded local actors, as much as the need for our universities to lead the pursuit of knowledge, to lead the pursuit of truth in its falsification and trying to look for counterfactuals where none exist. There is no bigger honor than me today than to be here with you, than to be referred to as Dr. Priyam Garu. And I would say there's one word I learned when I did my fieldwork here 2.5 decades ago, and that is Chepandu, sir. It is in your land and in your schools that I have wandered as a young researcher since the 1995, as a young mother with a year-old child behind me. That child, the daughter of mine, just turned 28 yesterday. More than mine, it is your children who have given me my scholarship. With them, with your children, I have learned the lyrical rhymes of Chitti Chilkamma, Amma Kutinda, and Guttu Manakwa. The rhymes that have helped me make friends with your children, our children. In 1995 up until 2005, these were children in schools, in Jadcharla, in Dharur, in Aiza, in Pratipadu, in Razul, and where all I wandered in your hills and in your forests. Today, they are first generation learners in our universities that we must build better. In the Pratipadu forest, I learned special alphabets, the Ta, A, Tarla, as I saw children use tamarind seeds sitting on the floor, making alphabets in the Girijan Ashram schools. These continue, the tamarind seeds and the alphabets and the sounds of the Ta, A, Tarla. These continue to shape the horizon of my thoughts on our multilingual universities of the future, a variety of people and their languages that must build the frontier of our universities in our we-ness. Before I proceed, I must admit also the lessons in mango eating and the ripe and right names that I misspelled, and the children taught me how to do it better. The Begumpalli that I thought was so sweet and probably something that was named right after the wife of the Nizam of Hyderabad. Here were young children in Vizag and elsewhere telling me, "Oh, it's not even Begumpalli. Can you sit down and pronounce this better?" I said, "What? Everybody in Hyderabad told me it is the Begumpalli." They said, "No. Now sit down and call it the Bhangina Palli." The Bhangina Palli in its Tribhang, the torso movement characteristic of the Indian dance forms of Odissi, leaves me reflecting about the embodiment of the mango in its triangularity and of the human aesthetics that can imagine the human body, the anatomy of the human body, just as Michelangelo's gaze on the anatomy of the human body and the Bharat's Natya Shastra offered a treatise on aesthetics in its reflective gaze. This is non-mechanical and non-linear frontiers of thinking that only the university can advance. Now I take a step back, sir, with your permission, to look back at the NEP 2020 moment and the India of aspirations that our Prime Minister Narendra Modi talks very often about, and the 15th August speech that he makes from the ramparts of the Red Fort. The draft of the new national education policy had been placed on the ministry's website even as the second Modi government took oath at the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan in May 29. So even as the Prime Minister and his cabinet took oath, quietly and silently, the ministry had put the draft for public viewing on its website. So as sunset happened in the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan, the government's first action was putting this draft policy on the website. Then, of course, came the COVID closures, but the announcement of the NEP in the midst of the COVID closures, 6 months literally, as we had forcibly been closed down because of COVID, represented the high priority of the Modi government of the NEP 2022. It is replete with many ideas and proposals about institutional restructuring, especially in higher education. And who better than Professor B.J. Rao to tell you what are the forms and formalities that many of those changes may take place. I look at large multidisciplinary universities and I look at multiple languages that characterize the Indian plural landscape as two very important ideas there. The Prime Minister also spoke this 15th August 2022 of the India of aspirations, the India of its youth and of their futures. As I engage with these ideas, I frame my arguments about the conceptual understanding of aspirations as I must do as an academic. As Professor Rao very eminently said, who else are we other than being academics? Temporal and spatial ideas, thought experiments, where the youth in the university simultaneously exist in the past, the present, and the future. About the history that was, our public universities amidst colonial contest, about our challenges today, and finally a plea to rebuilding our universities that I have elsewhere called an endeavor for reclaiming the public in our public university. In reclaiming, I call for a view to the ordinary, quotidian, everyday life forms of our universities. In rebuilding, I call for a direct engagement of the university with our public challenges, a frontier that must open the knowledge gates of the university. With your permission, sir, I move towards the first set of framing ideas in my interaction with you today, the universities and the capacity to aspire. I borrow the term capacity to aspire as it has been understood by noted social anthropologist Arjun Appadurai as a temporal capacity, as a capacity of time, where time is not a linear variable that will simply lapse. Time is not a variable on an XY axis. Time is not a chronology of sequence. For example, after 1986 policy comes 2020. Time is not a chronology. The youth simultaneously live in and move in and out of past, present, and future. The future has within it reflections on the past, and the youth have a capacity to reflect on the present. Our past is characterized by routine, by habits, by structural practices, in India especially, of the caste hierarchy. And the past is characterized by a routine which comes out in the present. Education is not simply a site of reproduction of whatever happened in the past, but education is a site of aspirations, of the possibility of social mobility, and none other than education provides in an egalitarian sort of way even the hope to shape the possibilities for a future. Yet as students collect in campuses, they reflect on what they have left behind. The past that they have left behind, poor quality or non-existent education in villages, in small towns, especially if you travel in a thought experiment to the north of the Vindhyas, where I interview students outside an education department called the Shiksha Sankai at the Banaras Hindu University in Varanasi. I find most students who come to the Shiksha Sankai at the BHU have already spent 7 to 8 years, believe it or not, after passing out their schools, acquiring various degrees in small colleges. And these colleges could be anything. Their names are as follows: the Jyotiba Phule Rajkiya Kanya PG Vidyalaya Chandauli, the Banshi College Allahabad, the Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj Kanpur Mahavidyalaya, or even selling shoes in Hyderabad shops, or to make it to the prestigious entrance exam of the BHU. So a child who must be about 17, 18 when he or she left their schools, by the time they reach a prestigious campus, much like your University of Hyderabad, the Banaras Hindu University campus, through an open fair entrance exam, by that time they have already spent 7 or 8 years acquiring various degrees in various colleges. I call this the labyrinthine. The BHU with its co-educational cultures, the BHU with its very good library, the BHU with its esteemed faculty is something that the youth aspire to come to. Now, I anonymized Garima Singh for reasons of research ethics, is an upper caste Thakur girl from Chandauli, the nearby town, an hour away from the global city, cosmopolitan city of Varanasi. She has completed her undergraduate and postgraduate 5 years of college without ever having attended college even once. She has these degrees in her home, in her steel almirah. The family would not let her go to college. BHU, with its co-educational culture and its great possibilities for education, and the possibility that Garima could find even a school teacher's job after studying at the Shiksha Sankai, shaped her aspirations for the future. When you get a degree, however, staying at home, why do you need to go to college? Said Garima's parents. From the limited data that she had available on her phone, Garima applied online and gave an entrance exam and fought her way to come to the Shiksha Sankai. Today, as I saw students struggling for their fees, making demands, there was in me a part of me that wanted to sit back and tell them that yes, it is your right, but do you even comparatively know that you have an anonymized Garima Singh who's not even able to walk the 1.5 hours that it takes from Chandauli to get onto even a map of higher education that is legible in India's lexicon of very famous institutions of higher education. Now, similar is the story at a very famous college on the Rajghat. So, one end, BHU is a linear city, Banaras is a linear city, as you are aware, on the banks of the Ganges. One end is the BHU campus, and close to it is the Shiksha Sankai or the Department of Education, which has started in the school, the Hindu boys' school where BHU was originally started, 1.5 hours away from the main campus at the other end of the Ganges, and at the other end of the city is the Rajghat campus, associated very much with the philosophy of the Theosophical Society of India, with Jiddu Krishnamurti, with Annie Besant. Now, today in that campus, girls have fought their way to be able to even get an admission. When Neeta, anonymized once again for reasons of research ethics, came from the neighboring state of Bihar, she also had seen the advertisement of this college on the net and given the exams for this entrance, Chori Chuppe as she calls it. After she qualified, she had her grandmother convincing her father, she had her sister-in-law, her bhabhi, convincing her brother. And finally, when she did get the admission and the parents agreed, look at who all came to leave her to college. Her grandfather, her dada, her grandmother, her dadi, her mother, and her father, and her elder brother. A team of 5 came to leave Neeta at the campus in the Rajghat that Annie Besant and Jiddu Krishnamurti had once thought would lead Indian minds to enlightenment. Now, in the Amrit Kal, let us reflect on those whose paths of transition to these colleges still remain barriers, as if they were mountains, as if they were Himalayan obstacles in the way of the youth coming to what is their possible and only home in association with higher education. Now, there's another one. There's Razia and there's Neeta. And they consider that the life in the Rajghat College, even as they stay in its hostel and do not intermingle with the city, the one thing they told me, this life is free of boundation. That was their own word, but expressed immediately the feeling of freedom. Razia studies in Rajghat College, but she goes back 1.5 hours to stay in the BHU main campus hostels, and she says, that's where you can realize freedom, that's where the big libraries are, that's where the good teachers are, that's where all the great speakers and lecturers come from all over the world. It is not, however, so easy. For Sunil Paswan, the journey to the Shiksha Sankai, the Department of Education, has been arduous for Sunil. He is the son of a mason in the neighboring state of Bihar. Schools in Bihar have done well, especially in the last 2 decades. But as he completed his school, the opportunities for higher education were almost non-existent. One of the last points that I will make will be for you to realize that south of the Vindhyas, to almost per lakh student population, we have about 50 colleges. In the state of Bihar, this number dwindles down to only about 5 colleges to per lakh eligible students and youth. So that's how fortunate we are down the south of the Vindhyas, and that's how unfortunate the life chances or the opportunities and aspirations for youth in the state of Bihar or in a number of states to the north of the Vindhyas are. Now, for Sunil Paswan, the journey started by first studying for a degree in geography, a BA, then MA, all of it by competing in a prestigious entrance exam at the Banaras Hindu University. And after 3+2, 5 years of undergraduate and postgraduate, Sunil also cleared the prestigious NET exam. However, the opportunities for PhD admission with a professor did not exist. Having passed the NET exam, Sunil was not able to further pursue his degree for a doctoral work or research PhD work at the BHU. Sunil then took the entrance exam for the Shiksha Sangai and repeated the 3+2 again, the B.Ed and M.Ed. So after 5 years of the process of going through undergraduate and postgraduate degrees. He then again took another 5 years. So 10 years in the labyrinthine, he cleared the net one more time, this time for education. Now for Sunil, the challenge is that he wants to get through a bharti, which means an appointment in the school teaching sector, but all on his own merit, because he belongs to the scheduled caste list in the neighboring state of Bihar. In Uttar Pradesh, he has to compete on open and general seats. He says that the exams that are now taken for bharti and niyukti are based on artificial intelligence. He says he's able to do everything except those that use the English language. He says logical reasoning should use logic, ma'am. It uses too much English. This is not a language I'm comfortable in. So this is where I believe that the call to multilingualism has to be taken so much more literally, that the boundaries of the universities begin to include the demands of the students, especially the first generation students, and begin to recognize what those barriers to success are. Because here's the classic example of a Sunil who's left his hometown behind, who's left his home state behind. Father is only a mason, has survived only on state support and scholarships, finished 2 degrees in geography, finished a NET exam, and has come back to repeat it all over again. Now, I believe the past that our leaders have left behind for us in the form of public universities, we stand on a solid bedrock of public universities, esteemed institutions, our contested colonial history of education and higher education in India. The Indian universities contested colonial control. Baroda, Mysore, BHU, Tagore's experiments with global cosmopolitan universities, the Vishwa Bharati, the original, the University of Calcutta. The British had to split it into 2, the Dhaka and Patna universities. The partition of Bengal was not just a political administrative partition, but partitioned the educational facilities of the important state of Bengal. So what was under attack was the mind of the peasant Indian. Imagine, the British in their power and glory feared the minds of the colonizers, feared the minds of the peasant Indian who paid the taxes under the permanent settlement. And the Gurudev, who we know as the poet laureate of our country and whose songs we hymn to our tunes of the national anthem, the Gurudev was open in his ideas. And as Professor B.J. Rao said, what other than the university to ideate? Now, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore had a root and branch criticism of the kind of limited utilitarian, what we frequently called Macaulayan utilitarianism, that was being imposed on our universities. It was called the government house utilitarianism. Although Britain itself was at that point of time debating and arguing with limited and narrow utilitarianism, as if Jeremy Bentham was going to put a calculus of welfare on every type of individualistic well-being. Now, Gaganendranath Tagore, related to Ravi Thakur, put in a big cartoon, and he called these universities, the universities of the colonizers, a term in Bengali, once again that I adopt, the Vidyar Karkhana, Vidya's factory. And he says these universities are nothing else but factories of education. And a cartoon put up by Gaganendranath Tagore that I'm sure to share very soon with you, it portrayed dhoti kurta clad men who are being forced and taken to a machine, and they are being churned out from this machine as suit clad optimistic gentlemen who are disoriented and disembedded. As Professor Rao would like to call them, they look a little lost, Professor Rao. Now, I have a picture here which I can't show you, but this picture is that of the Maharaja's College, Mysore. Upon my return in 2012 from the London School of Economics, I spent most of my time, these past 6-7 years, studying and understanding what the University of Mysore was, studying and understanding what a classroom at a good university might look like, studying and understanding why might we celebrate the Teachers' Day as 5th December. I haven't shared my photographs with you, but I'm proud to say that I have been at the Maharaja's College even on the 5th of September. And I have now interviewed alum who are 90 years of age. And when they've heard that this lady is here and she wants to interview the students who went to the Maharaja's College, I've got women who are 90 years of age, gentlemen who are 90 plus, take auto rickshaws and come to a coffee shop, give me interviews for 5 hours, but talk about their class. Talk about what the Maharajas meant to them. Now, the Maharaja's College, for example, was the seed where the University of Mysore originates, was the place to set up which in 1916, way back in 1916, when the only way to reach global was through the waters of the various oceans of the world, we had a 3-member committee, sir. And that committee consisted of Denham. It also consisted of C.R. Reddy. Now, these people went, the 3-member committee went to Oxford, it went to Chicago, it went to Australia. And it studied the educational governance of all these 3 states. M. Visvesvaraya, the industrial man, the tall industrial man, agreed to become the Prime Minister of the state of Mysore only on one condition, that the Maharaja would allow him to set up a modern university. In the papers that I read of M. Visvesvaraya, he writes ad nauseum, and it's going to come out in another book, a Festschrift in honor of James Maynard, where he talks about the literacy rates in Germany, Japan, countries that he's visited himself. So many global ideas about modernity, about science, about advancement, and 3 men on the sea route, the ocean route to various continents come back and give the blueprint of a university. Look at what the university does. In a classroom in that university are none other than the scholars teaching them, but the students are none other than people like R.K. Lakshman, R.K. Narayan, M.N. Srinivas, father or whatever, the patron saint of sociology, modern sociology in India. I'm even told that the Malgudi Days was written up originally sitting in a canteen chair at the Maharaja's College. Also together with them, H.Y. Sharda Prasad, who went on to become the press advisor to Indira Gandhi. Now, taught by eminent teachers, among the eminent teachers, Hiriyanna, but also Dr. Radhakrishnan, who was pulled to the Maharaja's College, many refusals. And that's why I believe that teachers also must not take too much to heart. If their appointment, promotions, etc. get delayed, I could see lots of it came Dr. Radhakrishnan's way also. Now, C. Ramling Reddy was persistent that Radhakrishnan should be brought to the Mysore Maharaja's College, even as the Maharaja himself deterred. So the 3rd attempt he succeeds. In the 3 or 4 years that Dr. Radhakrishnan spends at the Maharaja's College, what is it that he earns the most? The trust of the students. By the evening, his home is open to students. And as he had lived in poverty himself, he understood what it was to be students from agricultural, rural households and to be students from poverty. Now, such was the strength of Radhakrishnan's classes that the lectures given in the classroom were published by Seahurst and Company into the first classic text on philosophy in India, Indian philosophy. Radhakrishnan had competence both in European philosophy as much as in Indian philosophy. And those who attended his classes tell me how they looked up to him to listen to his lectures on Kant and his tilting at the mills. I also remember, as Professor Rao said, that the university is where you ask the questions. Now, Dr. Radhakrishnan was not in awe of anyone. As Mahatma Gandhi came back from South Africa, this was just about the time that Gandhi was coming back. Radhakrishnan and Gandhi met each other in Chennai, in Madras then. And Gandhi then was full of his philosophy, his ideas, his experiments with life were firming up after he had lived in the farms and the ashrams that he had made in South Africa. Gandhi told Radhakrishnan, in the jungle, it is a lot better. It is the rule of nature. And look, there's no disease in the jungles. Dr. Radhakrishnan asked him one question, how do you know? And that was the end of an argument. Now, therefore, a very rich foundation of the public university in its argument, in its depth of reasoning is laid. By 1921, Dr. Radhakrishnan had never traveled abroad. One of the reasons he didn't get the chair at Mysore University was because he didn't have a foreign degree. And then, not having a foreign degree, trying to publish somewhere, I have read notes where when he's writing to academics abroad, it's the government of India, the colonial government of India that used to open each letter. That used to stamp, okay, what is he writing here? Is he writing seditious stuff? Should it go abroad? So even to get comments on one article, this is the rigmarole he had to go through. He would wait patiently for mail, dak to come back for 3 months, 4 months. This was not the email age. Now that Radhakrishnan, by 1921, a man who had never put his foot outside of India, the Philosophical Association, the American Philosophical Association, 1921 opened, and its presidential session was on the theme of idealism in the thinking of Bosanquet and Dr. Radhakrishnan. That's the stature he gains. So that's the classroom for you, ladies and gentlemen. With your permission, sir, I come to the concluding part of my framing ideas, which is, as you goaded me to think, what is the context of India today? And I can tell you, Professor B.J. Rao is an ideas man. Patiently, gently, he nudged me towards talking about what is it that is the context of India today. And the context of India today is where the dreams, the aspirations must meet delivery. And once again, I would have said, oh, this sounds like too soon has someone framed this. But when I thought about the context of India today, I said, this has to be done. It has to be realized in this life for these students. They can't wait for an afterlife to attain a nirvana in the public university. So what is it? We have a strong foundation of public universities. Believe it when I tell you. We have a large infrastructure on the supply side. Over 1,000 universities, over 42,000 colleges, and 11,000 standalone institutions that soon must be renamed as college or university. A gross enrollment rate which is low compared to China. We are at about 27. But there's a triptych of change which sociologist of higher education Martin Trow calls massification. A massification, economists make us believe as if when all the masses will come to the university. No, that's not how he looked at it. He said the university must transition from being a place only for the elites to becoming something about the masses. And that change begins to happen when GER rates somewhere reach about 15%. India is at about 27%. However, I don't consider it that we have reached there. China is at 50, the US is at 80. So you can be anywhere unless this becomes something that the large masses easily walk in and walk out of and have no discomfort. A Sunil Paswan or a Neeta doesn't have to carry her grandfather, her grandmother. The grandmother makes the son understand. The brother is made to understand by the brother's wife. The mother remains quiet. Do you need 5 adults to let a girl come to college? Do you need 5 adults to allow her to become a school teacher? Is her participation in undergraduate and postgraduate a method of bounding her that you keep her degrees in a Godrej Almira and tell her no need to go to college? Why? Because there may be boys there. There may be ideas there that these are not leftist ideas the parents are scared of. Look at what they're scared of. The fear of the parent keeps her in a mosquito net. Do you think women like me can even go and argue with families like theirs? Perhaps I will be interviewed first. Okay, where are you from? Then I will tell them I am from your neighboring state. Then I will be asked, okay, so why did you walk so far? What is the need? I remember when I went for my PhD, there were my in-laws asking my husband, she studied so much. What is the need for her to go and get this additional degree? And my husband kept this to himself for many years till I finished my PhD. And then he told me this PhD was so important for me. Had you not done this, these were the questions being asked. So today also, as women, and not just women, I tell you, I will introduce you to some of the variations and adopt your own country. Understand what privilege we have when we become students of an esteemed university like ours. The scheduled tribe enrollment rates in this country are as low as 5.6%. So the Tarla in the Girijan Ashram Shala in Pratipadu needs to transition to make its place into this world of universal higher education, the public and free higher education. Perhaps what the principles of multiple languages, many universities, means for us. Now, I have spoken to you about the pain and anguish that I have about the great regional variation. This was a theme, I'm carrying it in my book there, of my PhD work, where I saw that states to the south of the Vindhyas, as if a tectonic plate divides my great motherland. States to the south fare better. Andhra, which was just about the only southern state below national average literacy rates in the 1990s, as I was a researcher, a young mother with a toddler trailing behind me, and then, of course, a sea of youngsters leading me to your poetry and to your mangoes, and something else that I will come to at the end. I learned very much that even Andhra was catching up. States like Bihar took a decade and a half more to catch up with national average literacy rates. That's how slow they were walking in, right? Now, this great regional variation can be a tectonic plate, can be a continental drift. Many a times, my demographer supervisor, and this is multidisciplinarity, as I stand before you, the openness, the freedom, the confidence of my thoughts comes because who were my supervisors? One an anthropologist, the other a demographer. Couldn't see eye to eye. When I would go with the numbers to the anthropologist, he would say, did I ask you to get me kilograms of your thesis? Can you give me an argument? One argument. And nothing is going to come from your surveys. I would do a lot of NSS data, this quintile, this decile, traverse through numbers. Stop wasting your time on numbers. Your ethnography is going to yield more. I'd go to the other supervisor, the demographer, and he'd tell me, what is new in what you are telling me of the north-south divide in India? Can you begin to imagine beyond your boundary? So I thought maybe he's talking about the boundary. The only thing I'd been taught in India was my boundary was gender and caste. He says, no, silly girl, can you think and see that all the states to the north of the Vindhyas, if I take demographic characteristics, up to Iran, very similar. And if I take the states down below, down the southern parts of the Vindhyas, and join them up until the southeast, all of southeast, shared characteristics, and you finish your PhD fast, let a continental drift happen, lady, and I can tell you, the north of the Vindhyas will drift away to join from Afghanistan until the Iran plateau, and the southern parts will drift away here. So here was the imaginary of thousands of years being presented before a researcher who only wanted to understand why school-going children were faring so differently, and in fact, why were there outlier regions within India? Why was there a sub-Saharan Africa within India? Look at the imagination opened up to a continental drift, to numbers, to different countries. My question today is that do I have the tools within my university that I similarly lead up a Sunil Paswan who wanted to study geography from Bihar until BHU to imagine beyond? Do I give him or her the research tools? Do I give Garima, who's never attended a college, the tools to imagine beyond? The regional variation argument is very, very strong and makes for very differing perceptions and experiences of higher education. Now, as I want to conclude today, I want to say a few things. And these few things are that we need to think of India in its diversity. We need to think of India as a land of possibilities. And we need to think on how we need to re-engage and build better. One of the possible pathways that comes to my mind is the constant bickering between none other than Mahatma Gandhi and Gurudev Tagore, both of them great friends with each other, but on matters of education, great acrimony and differences. So they called it walking alone and walking together. Can we, in our differences, reconstitute the university that is going to be sarthak for a large generation of youth? The world's largest population of poor youth is going to find its home in Bharat, that is India. Can we build universities that open the frontiers of knowledge? COVID tells us more than before that the paradigms of knowledge need to be strengthened. The paradigms of science, the paradigms of challenge, the paradigms of falsification need to be challenged. We need to believe, but only rhetorically. What we need to do is build better. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, madam, for your enlightening lecture that you have delivered. And thanks for sharing your rich experience and research that you have undertaken in policy planning and all. You have received a vibrant and dynamic welcome by the students at the administrative building. And let me tell you, madam, we have waited for you too long. And this program we had planned in the month of August, but due to preoccupation of Madam, our Vice Chancellor was very keen to have you here as a distinguished speaker on this occasion, which has happened today. With permission of the chair, I request the participants, audience here, in case if they want to ask any questions, Madam is available here to answer those questions.
Good evening, madam. Thanks for a very good lecture, and it was all it had all my attention throughout the talk. But in my mind, I kept wondering. See, if we look at Indian economy, it moved from agrarian economy to more service economy, missing the manufacturing economy, right? So, I mean, if you look at the growth of many countries who are doing very good, who have a lot of innovation happening in those countries, they have invested so much in higher education. Okay. Is the investment required for building the universities that matter is really happening in India? If we look at the amount of investment over 10 years period, it is static, and the population is growing like anything. And China is a clear example where as they started investing more and more for research and for higher education, they saw results of it growing in their growth. It is better that we learn something from that and start. I believe we should start investing more, because see, when Thomas Jefferson thought in United States, one of the founding fathers of United States, when they wanted to start public education, there were not enough.
Let her answer the question now.
Yeah.
I think you have asked the question, a very important question.
I will add another question.
Quickly, make the question very pointed.
Because yes, of course, because I have to give the context to the question. So I am asking. When there were no funds, he auctioned federal lands. Lands, generated resources, started public education, made education free throughout United States, public education. Where are we having such statesmen now to give emphasis to higher education or public education for that matter? So what about the universities that you have mentioned that really matter, like Mysore University, Usmania University? These are the universities that were there even before independence, and they were doing pretty well. And if we see them now, I don't think they have that much glory as they had before. So, how should we look at it? Where have we failed?
I mean, you have a long question, and much of the answer comes in what you ask. So, I will answer it from many angles. I won't answer it like, okay, you are asking me this question, here's the answer. We'll answer it from many angles. One is the funding angle. Now, the funding angle is clearly dissociated. The answer really is that the finest universities in India, whether it is Mysore or it is Baroda or Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore or the Banaras Hindu University, were coming up without a penny from the colonizers to challenge the British ideas and design of colonizing, as I told you, in fact, fearful of the enlightenment of the peasant mind. That was the British plan. Now, against that plan, if Indians succeeded under the might of colonial rulers, and the example that I give you of Mysore is only to tell you what difficulty. Today we say, okay, we have to take permission from ministry, from UGC. What difficulty it must have been for the Mysore Maharaja. Remember, the Maharaja was until then only a regent before that. He was not a full king before that. And he negotiates with British power and 3 members. And I urge you to read the autobiography of C. Ramling Reddy. And unfortunately, one of the reasons why I believe we are a poorer country, I wish people to the north of India even knew about who C. Ramling Reddy was. They would understand that Indian universities at their best were powered by the idea of the protesters. I have all sympathy with many types of protesters today, But I want to understand what is it that they have built. Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. There was a time, and the bickering of Gandhi and Gurudev was such, Gandhi did not believe that a university of this kind should be opened. And Gandhi was at that point of time unwell or in jail, I forget, it's in my book which is there, I can read out. Gurudev came to meet him in Ahmedabad, and Gandhi teased him saying, okay, you have again come with a begging bowl. And Gurudev was very unhappy because he had no money to pay his teachers and he was unwell. Now Gurudev took another long and arduous ship journey to London and to Latin America and painted fervently, sold the paintings for salaries to his teachers, right? Now, there is another example. Gurudev believed very much that the university, this global cosmopolitanism, must be locally embedded. Now, I used to only think until the time I was a child that Gurudev wrote great poetry in English, that's why he got the Nobel Prize. These were the woolly-headed ideas I had till the time I read up in depth and I realized Gurudev travels to New York, sends a telegram to a man in Urbana-Champaign or Cornell, I forget, and that's Elmhurst, great agricultural scientist. The poet makes friends with the plowman. Why? The plowman then says, okay, I will come to Shantiniketan. And every evening, Elmhurst goes on a little open truck to the villages to study the disease in the potatoes. The university is going to the villages, studying the diseases in the in the cows and the buffaloes or the goats that people had in the poultry. Now this is another example. The BHU, great examples of how the Mahamana collected money, asked for. In fact, the great story is that the Nizam of Hyderabad insulted him while making the donations. But he did not lie low on this. And let me tell you, the science labs at the University of Mysore, it was decided that Mysore would be liberal arts. The sciences were more in Bangalore, which is why you see Indian Institute of Science today, if you see, is doing very well in global lists. That land grant is given by none other than the Maharaja of Mysore. The Tatas only gave a top-up grant to it, right? And till the 70s, Sir C.V. Raman and his entire ilk, they were floating between Mysore and Cambridge. Easy transition. That was the level of knowledge. Something happens by the 70s that I find that the good faculty begins to flee there. The story that I have not told you, and which is a powerful story, and that happens when we don't engage with our own universities. It is left to a researcher to go and find. I find Mysore produces India's first full woman Dalit professor, whose mother was an agricultural laborer. She used to study in the Maharaja's College in the 1960s, late 1960s. And her mother used to work in the fields by day. And as she, Devanhalli Taluka, and as she progressed, then the mother came to the Taluk headquarters. Somebody gave her a little hut on the outskirts of the village. The girl used to study in school, then go and sit with the mother because the mother started selling vegetables by evening. Because even the free education, she was not able to. Now the touching stories of C. Parvatamma, when she comes to Maharaja's college, she doesn't have a place to live in. She is given a place in the teacher's college hostel. She is given sleeping rights there. For the first time I realized how lucky and fortunate I was to have a full hostel in Delhi University when I studied. Sleeping rights meant that in the late 1960s, Parvatamma sat in the veranda of Maharaja College shivering from malaria because by day she had to attend college. Even with malaria, she could only go back to sleep in the teacher's college hostel. She did not have permission to stay during day. And on a government grant then, she competed for a PhD at none other than the famous Harvard. She went there and she realized that this was a culture she could not cope with. She came back and then she went to the University of Manchester where I've tracked her PhD work now. I figured out that in her life, illustrious life at the Mysore University, C. Parvatamma, the daughter of an agricultural laborer, was on the committee of the Reserve Bank of India. Jagjeevan Ram Morarji Desai often sought her views on how tribal welfare should be done in this country. She had views that were contrarian to powerful politicians on reservations. She wrote an article called Reservation, a Pie in the Sky, by the 1974 Indian Sociological Association in Patna. Parvatamma was critiquing M.N. Srinivas, who I have told you was in the hallowed and distinguished list in the Mysore University. Now, therefore, I have every argument and evidence to say that up until the 1970s, the glory remains intact. And I believe very much that the story of decline needs to be assiduously put together. It is not just a story of lack of funds. I will not speak out of turn. As I've told you, I'm only a researcher. I'm begging for time here. I will sit back and I will try and understand. But the story that we must begin to build is for ourselves. China is not interested in what India does. And China is not an example we want to even go to. China's higher education is built on plan investments from 1995, on borrowed World Bank funds. We borrowed the same money, we used it for school education, the schools that I talked to you about. Do I want to have a future in India where all these students that I saw in Andhra Pradesh did not go to school and we built our universities in the 1990s? I don't want to be that great of the world. I have seen the children in your state more than you have. I have been to your mandals, to your hills, to your forests. I've been on tribal department jeeps and seen the children of the underprivileged come to the doors of the schools. In my life, I wouldn't trade my country to become a China. I'm not a trader nation. I am a country who's proud to have fought the traders. My understanding must begin with trying to build a university that matters. What is the university that matters? And I'm still a research student and scholar of that. Remember, I don't have all the answers.
Thanks for a wonderful and inspiring lecture, ma'am. I have a very specific question for you. According to you, is there a difference between teaching children and teaching adults? If yes, should we not come up with a training program or a certificate or some kind of a mechanism where we capture the difference between teaching of children and teaching of adults? Because as of now, in mainstream higher education classrooms, teachers like myself, we automatically assume teaching skills as present just because we have completed a NET exam or a JR or a PhD, whatever is the eligibility clause at that point in time. So your views on this, please.
I believe very much that, a pedagogical introspection in higher education practices is required. But I also believe simultaneously that this must be built by you on your campus. Because the story of Ta Tarla is a story that I can only talk to you about, or I need a friend in Pratipadu to even understand what I'm talking about. Do you think it makes any sense when I go and talk about it to the Shiksha Sankai at the Department of Education in BHU? No. So I believe very much that this has to be a highly decentralized effort, a teaching center, a writing center. Both of these are very important for higher education institutions, especially for institutions such as yours that aim and aspire to be institutions of eminence. But I also believe very much that society must begin to look at universities in trust. Those who have a lot must begin to simply give back, even if it is not a private investment in their own children. Imagine that same Mysore, where I go to the university, and whose poet laureate is none other than Kuvempu, and whose poetry I know now a lot of. And I find a lot of his relatives, etc., in Chikmagalur have become the global leaders in fortune and wealth. Their children hire a private jet and fly to the US for their education. I do not grudge anybody the right to go anywhere. I do not grudge anybody, turning to the globe for educational acquisitions. But I believe very much that we must build a culture of giving back. Where, how, and this must be done in a selfless sort of way. Because COVID has taught us one thing, that even our right to life is not our own individual right. It exists in the commons. When I've said this, I have said this with a lot of deep thought. Do you know that a 1 national institute in virology in Pune was the only one doing research in viruses in my own home state of Bihar. Only one doctor who used to do research in viruses in Kalazar. And I remember all of us used to laugh on that doctor in the 1980s, say, everybody researches on bacteria, what is this fool doing on? And this man became sought after at the age of 85 because he had been anticipating a lot of this. The fact that many of these states did not even have a national institute of virology, testing, labs. Sure, we didn't have the higher order genomics. But did each state need to have, for example, multidisciplinary universities with their own hospitals? Yes, they needed to have it. A lot of the issue was simply not about treatment this time. It was about basic management with oxygen cylinders. I mean, the BHU had to borrow the expertise of the DRDO, and I saw the dead plant of a DRDO, but I also know many lives were lost in the BHU. But even more funnier was the fact that the BHU has a very good hospital, medical college, sir, on campus. The college students told me that, ma'am, we were the frontline workers. We were dealing with the heavy, wave 2 was very bad on Varanasi. We were dealing with a heavy load of patients, but to do our classes, we were supposed to go online behind the computer. And we were supposed to listen to lectures from behind. So I think we need to leave all that behind. Following COVID, we need to understand what is the reimagination of our university in the commons. Each state needs to have not one. I mean, your state needs to have maybe 3 to 4, not too many, not 10, but 3 at least of this caliber of the University of Hyderabad. Don't look on the land saying, oh, very expensive land, and therefore, people tell me about JNU, very expensive land in the heart of the city. No, cities must learn to live with public goods. Cities must learn to live with a certain amount of rurality. And cities do not have to be constructs of glass houses. Otherwise, cities will be reservoirs of global vulnerability, as COVID has shown us to be.
It's a very excellent lecture, but I have a small question. Country has taken the social diversity into picture and is very well implemented. At the same time, many of the states you have universities where I believe the ambience is important, but there is no regional diversity or cultural diversity. Is there anything that you can do really so that the students who get enrolled, they will have the time to cross-talk with the other cultures, other people coming from various places. And that is missing out in many of the local state universities. And is there a way that one can improve the situation, both within the faculty as well as among the children or students?
This touches the heart of my thoughts. Forget diversity. If I could teach my friends in Delhi to enjoy Kishtaiya's kaja, I would have earned a day. If I could teach my friends in Delhi to understand what, and I'm going to spell this wrong again and you will laugh at me, but it's the putareko, the rolled sweet, right? Does Delhi even know that this exists? And that bothers me sometimes. That's the country that we need to be. And the universities are great harbingers, whether you believe it or not. In my idea of the Sarthak Vishwavidyalaya, I would have the canteens serving the local cuisine, such that when a global man or woman embarks on a mission to your university, they see you as locally embedded and engaged. We are not sites of Kentucky Fried Chickens or whatever else. And I will tell you here an example. The young children who have taught me my scholarship, they would look at me and start saying in Telugu that here's the hungry woman, she's come to our school now. So this was their perception of me. They used to think that I used to take sweets wherever I went to their schools. I realized the children were not hungry for sweets. They used to see that at lunchtime, I have no rice and sambar with me. I have no curd milk to drink. They were getting all this in their midday milk. So they didn't care that here was a woman who had a box of sweets in her hand. And they used to tell the teacher, give her a thali and give her some food, the hungry woman had come. So I was nicknamed as the hungry woman who comes to school, and that I will get a lunch if children give it to me. So this is the lesson. Now, many other similar examples I can give you, and I believe very much that the angst and anxiety of youth about their futures not being fulfilled, about their dreams, I'm not saying we are not letting them down, we are in many ways, but I also believe that if they saw more and if they learned comparatively, our country would be a more diverse and finer country. Which is why I believe that the starting point is such, ab initio, that we can never and we should never be a China. We are not a homogeneous country, but we thrive in our differences. Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha of our national anthem talks to us about our diversity. And the poet laureate imagined this as much. I mean, when he designed the sari as a dress, which I very happily, every time I come to your state, buy one for myself, he taught the women how to wear the sari in its differences, adopted by women beginning from Bengal up until Sri Lanka. The cultural revolution that happens. This is not the Maoist cultural revolution, right? So this is the country of my differences, the country of its many songs, the country of its many mangoes, the country of its many sweets, the country of its many languages, the country of its eminent down-to-earth scientists. Look at the way in which I would see, even in the northern parts of India, the testing man would do the COVID testing. Not a day when the testing man said, oh, there's too much COVID, people are dying, I'm not going to go and test. That's the spirit of public service that we have in our country. So we may be a land with few, we may be a land, we are poor, that's fine. I mean, we have a history. I have no problem with my history. Can I constitute a university now that can compete with the global minds? That's the only challenge that is left. And it's a challenge that is best addressed by us as a community, right? That's how I look at it. And I just agree with everything you said.
I think on that note, we must thank the speaker. I think Manisha ji has touched very important chords, very sensitive chords of our system by taking individual cases and extracting a profound lesson out of it. So I think India is made of these beautiful, unsung, insightful stories. And if our education, if our universities can bring out this sensitivity in our day-to-day functioning, I think we will set a different model, definitely far away from that of China, which we should be. Thank you very much, madam. Really appreciate your time with us, and Devesh will give a formal vote of thanks.
Sir, before I convey my vote of thanks, we would like to felicitate Madam, and I request Vice Chancellor and Pro Vice Chancellor to felicitate Madam.
I'm honored and deeply touched. I mean, this is the most prestigious invitation I've had. I'm very, very honored. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam. I feel honored and privileged to get this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this special occasion to the speaker of distinguished lecture and the audience who have attended and made this event a memorable and successful. Thank you is a prayer which cannot be seen or touched. It must be felt. I, on behalf of the University of Hyderabad fraternity and my own behalf, truly express my deep gratitude to respected Professor Manisha Priyam, Department of Education Policy from NIPA, for accepting our invitation and delivering a distinguished lecture on building universities that matter, the context of India today. Your presence today, Madam, has immensely enhanced its importance. Besides, we are extremely grateful to you for your insightful address to our faculty, staff, and students. I look forward for your visit to university again. The topic of today's distinguished lecture was very relevant in the present times when the nation is in process of implementation of NEP 2020. I also thank you, madam, for handling the question answer session where you gave a very good answers to some of the questions that were raised here. I take this opportunity to express my heartfelt thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Professor B.J. Rao, for the initiative he took in holding this function and make this event memorable. He has always been providing us the able guidance in all our activities, ensuring that we always do the right things at right time, in the right way, at the right place. I express my sincere thanks to our Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor R.S. Sarraju, for his all-round support in all possible manner in organizing this event. I also express my sincere thanks to our esteemed guests, faculty members, officers, non-teaching staff, students who have taken keen interest and attended this event. I express my heartfelt thanks to all my colleague officers and non-teaching staff members who always stood by me to motivate me in organizing this event. I feel proud and thank each one of them for making this event successful. My special thanks to Shri Ashish Jacob Thomas, Public Relation Officer, and Shri Krishna Ram for their arrangements. I convey my sincere thanks to each one of you who are present here, and I convey my sincere thanks to anyone if missed out in the above order. I express my sincere thanks to all my friends who have attended this event and will carry on the memories that we have taken after this lecture. I thank you all very much.